Hello and welcome to Shannon Reviews, where I just review stuff. And it's been a long time since everything, really. Um, I know you guys see the title of the video, but before I get to that, I just want to say a couple of things. One, I want to apologize for many things. One, just dropping off in the middle of, such a I guess a long run, really. A lot of my videos dated back to almost 8 years ago. It seems like a very, it not, it seems, it definitely feels like a long time. And, just coming back into it, and especially with the new Stress Room podcast that was uploaded earlier today. If you haven't seen that, I'll leave a link in the description below. But I first wanted to apologize to everyone here who may have been waiting for a new video from me and haven't heard from me in a while. And first off, I just want to apologize. Life happened and I wanted to take a hiatus. I was in the middle of school, in the middle of work. I just became a licensed professional in the state where I live in, so I wasn't 100% sure if I could continue running the YouTube channel with the license, clients, working with clients and, crossing that boundary line. I think it's okay as long as I keep professional and personal separate. So it should be fine. Another thing I want to say is I want to thank everyone who stuck around even on my hiatus. All 294 of you. 294. That's six away from 300 subscribers. That is absolutely mind-boggling to me and absolutely amazing. And the fact that all 294 of you decided to stick around, I so deeply appreciate that. This is off the cuff, not scripted. So, from the bottom of my heart, I just want to say thank you. And I'm magnificent at segues. As you guys know from the Stress Room podcast, if you listen to it already, I'm magnificent at segues. So in the past, the majority of the themes with Shannon Reviews was Hell's Kitchen and Knight Rider. There are many other reviewers out there who cover Hell's Kitchen way better than I do. There's a YouTuber named Flynn Masters who does amazing deep dives into Hell's Kitchen lore. So I'll leave that up to him. And the other, as I said, is Knight Rider. Yes, we have Knight Rider historians. I'll link both of their YouTube channels below as well. Check them out. They're absolutely amazing in what they do. Um, but yeah, Knight Rider was a big thing here on the channel. I did 2 years of Knight Rider month, which was difficult, especially when I had to and upload individually. I think this was before you could schedule a day and time for videos to upload. If that was a thing back in the day, if I had time, I probably would have done all of it at once and then just set days to upload. Anyway, it's 2025, brand new year, brand new everything. Um, Also, speaking of brand new everything, this is where I'll probably do the reviews from now on. I did buy a, camera and tripod. However, it's a hassle with the SD card and all that. So I'm trying to simplify things, go back to basics. I'm not any of these extravagant YouTubers that do things. I just do what I do for the fun of it. And if I'm able to progress and get new equipment to try new things, then so be it. But in the meantime, we're here in my room with a blurred background because I don't want you guys to see what's behind me. I really don't. Um, but anyway, why the title of the video? So, me being a big fan of the show Knight Rider, I can also link Knight Riders, both Knight Rider Month 1 and Knight Rider Month 2. I know you guys can search for them on the channel too. They have their own separate playlists. However, um, for conveniences, I could also put that in the description below if you'd like, or I can link them in the video, which I learned how to do last night, by the way. So I might either put them in the description down below, or I can link them occasionally and throughout the video. If you just want to click links after you watch the video, that's fine. Sorry about the webcam. Every time I move, it loses focus and blurred background. I'm recording via Zoom, hence the blurred background. Anyway, where am I going with this? Oh yeah, Knight Rider. So, it was announced that Universal, who owns ABC, the production company of the original Knight Rider series, is coming out with Knight Rider in 4K. As I mentioned in the Session podcast, I am really looking forward to it. If you Google Knight Rider 4K and you see the box set, I guess SDV he put it the best, I think, in the podcast where he said he's sort of an intern who knows how to do Photoshop and it may have been a last minute project thing. Oh crap, I have this thing that's due tomorrow. Poof. Okay, let's blast it out. I hope the box doesn't actually look like that, but I am looking forward to everything else. So, with the theme of that, I wanted to do a sort of deep dive into one of my favorite Knight Rider villains and maybe look at it through a clinical lens. Since, I'm a licensed mental health professional now, maybe using those skills to take deep dives into fictional characters and what their frame of mind is, how their brain works, looking at possible diagnoses. Now, since I'm a licensed mental health counselor, I can diagnose legally in the state that I live in. So, I'm just giving a fair warning to anyone here. I can. You can agree, disagree with what I say. Feel free, but I'm just no that I can diagnose. Um, but anyway, let's take a deep dive in to one of my favorite Knight Rider villains and see where his mind was at, maybe piece together the puzzle of what made him who he was, his frame of mind, all those little nuances that may or may not have been covered in the show. I know there was a book called Mirror Image, which was a novelization of season 2, episode 1. So maybe piecing all that together, we can get a better idea of Garth Knight. And yes, I am using Microsoft PowerPoint, so please don't be mad. Um, so anyway, this is a Garth Knight deep dive. So this is Garth, and a little background story on him as I'll get in. So this is Garth Knight, and he is the son of the late Wilton Knight, who founded Knight Industries and the Foundation for Law and Government. There's a scene in season 1, episode 1, where Devin and Miles, so let me backtrack a little bit here. So season 1, episode 1. There's a character by the name of Michael Long who gets shot in the face, gets reconstructive surgery, and is born as Michael Knight. There's a scene in season one, episode one, after the big reveal where the bandages come off and hello, David Hasselhoff. And we have a scene where Devin Miles looks to Wilton. Devin Miles was a very old friend of Wilton's, second in command, and he's sort of like the father figure for Michael. Anyway, Devin looks to Wilton and says that this young man, that this individual bears a striking resemblance between this young fellow and you as a young man. And then Wilton gives him that look. And it's almost, I don't know really how to say it. It's very confusing, especially with season two. You don't know, like, Wilton gives Devin a look and you don't know why. And then season two, episode one, you get this reason why. Because Garth Knight did some very shady things and was locked up in a prison in Africa. So, and Garth Knight and his father were estranged from each other for a very long time. And Garth didn't really have a chance to say goodbye to his father. It just was what it was. Anyway, so Garth, who is he? Well, he's around 30, lives in the state of California, and he lives in a mansion with him and I guess a significant other. I don't know how. I'll get into it in a little bit about the relationship dynamic between Garth and who I'm going to bring up at some point. Anyway, so Garth is mad at the world. And you can clearly see that in season two, episode one. You can clearly see that in his facial expression here. There's a scene in season two where he's speaking with his mother. And in Garth's words, says, wasn't Michael Knight designed to replace me? It wasn't a question. It was actually more of a statement. He and his mother talk about wanting Devin Miles and Michael Knight offed. Again, this is going up on YouTube, so I have to be very careful with what I say. And then Garth says, after all, he was designed by my late great father to replace me, wasn't he? So Garth already had a rocky relationship with his father, and the fact that there wasn't any resolution prior to Wilton Knight's passing, and Garth is just having this pent-up anger. Garth acknowledges it himself that Michael Knight was a replacement. Now, Michael Knight, formerly known as Michael Long, was a police officer. So, in Garth's view, Michael Knight is everything that Wilton Knight wanted in a son, but never got. So, this is the Knight family. So, you have Wilton Knight, his mother Elizabeth, and his sister Jennifer. I am guessing his sister Jennifer could possibly be a younger sibling. I'm not 100% sure. That's my guess. Anyway, both his parents were rich, and Garth, I'm guessing, being the older sibling, felt that he had all this power to do what he wanted. And at some point, I'm not exactly sure when, both Wilton and Elizabeth divorced. For reasons not explained in the episode, I mean, it's hinted that Elizabeth and Devin Miles might have had a secret relationship on the side, or Elizabeth had feelings for Devon Miles. It's this whole big thing. Anyway, so as I said, while Garth was in Africa, Wilton, I guess at some point, didn't want anything to do with the son anymore. Whatever crime that he did in Africa, which I think in the episode was hinted about diamond mines and all the people in there. I'm not 100% sure what happened. I'm also not 100% sure how long Garth was incarcerated. I know one of my videos in Knight Rider Month tries to theorize how old Garth was when he was first incarcerated, maybe how long he was there. Honestly, I don't know. We can only make a theory. Anyway, his father, from Garth's perspective, was a non-existent being. He was just, I guess, a sperm donor, but it sounds like they never really had a good relationship to begin with. It's almost as if Wilton Knight was rarely there for his son. I know probably then it was like World War II, you sweep your feelings underneath the rug, you do what you have to do. And maybe Garth did what he did to seek the attention of his father. We don't know. All we know is that their relationship went from broken to basically non-existent. And then I guess Elizabeth, being the rich mom that she was at the time, she gives Garth everything. She spoils Garth rotten. Anything Garth wants, Garth gets. Maybe she was trying to fill in that void of the father figure. Like she was trying to beat both parents and trying to compensate for the non-existent parent, which sometimes happens. However, as you see in the episode, both Garth and Elizabeth do evil things. They plan evil things. So in this case, the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, if you catch my drift. Now, I don't know exactly the relationship that Garth had with his sister Jennifer. I know in season 4, episode 1, there may have been an again rocky relationship. Garth doesn't know how to hold relationships, folks. He's been damaged since God knows when. Everybody has chosen everything else over him. His late father chose his business, his dream over his son. Then Wilton chooses this complete stranger and puts this stranger in involuntary witness protection program and chooses that person over him. So it's just everybody choosing everybody else over Garth. And I don't know about you guys, but I would be pretty mad at that too. Now, I'm not condoning behavior. I'm not. I don't justify what Garth does at all. It's not our thoughts and our feelings that get us into trouble. It's what we do with those thoughts and those feelings that get us into trouble. So we may have thoughts about wanting to punch somebody in the face. We may feel anger towards that person that we want to punch in the face, but we only get in trouble if we actually punch that person in the face. So there's a lot of abandonment and neglect that Garth feels, and it's all coming out in what he does. So, again, well, not again, but this individual here is Sambe Kuna. and he was one of the African revolutionaries that Garth met while Garth was incarcerated. They sort of helped each other out, came up with this plan together. There is some distrust there. Um, Sambe found out Garth's personal reasons for the plan, and Garth just almost wanted to rip Sambe to shreds. Again, I'm trying to not give away the episode with not trying to give away the episode, but also giving you guys enough information. So Sambe and Garth became business partners and went on this venture to create a big, huge, gigantic truck named Goliath. And unfortunately, I didn't think to put a picture of Goliath on this slideshow. So just type in Knight Rider with a K, Knight Rider, Goliath, really big truck. Anyway, so Garth does have someone to trust in Sambe, I guess, to a point. However, that that one scene where Garth turns to Sambe and says, "Don't you threaten me," after Sambe says about, mentioning Garth's personal vendetta in whatever the plan is, and saying that, we have basically saying, if you can't do your job, I know other people who can. Garth doesn't take too kindly to threats. While in Sambe's case, it was a reminder, not a threat. Poor Garth. And here in the middle, we have Adrian Margot. And Adrian first appears in the season 2 episode called Soul Survivor. I believe I've mentioned that in my Knight Rider month villains trilogy. Um, so basically in Soul Survivor, she plays a cat, Adrian Margot, I guess, coerces an 18-year-old tech whiz to basically hijack Kit, the Nine Industries 2000. And at some point, Kit's central processing unit, you know, is separated from his body. It's a whole big thing. Anyway, remember how I said that everybody chooses Michael, who's on the far left here, over Garth, who's on the far right here? Adrian is another one of those individuals that want to choose Michael over Garth. And Garth knows this. Adrian does not hide the fact that she has a personal, extensive interest in Michael Knight due to their history, but again, so does Garth. Garth doesn't take too kindly to this, especially in my personal opinion. I think Garth has feelings for Adrian, feelings that even he doesn't want to admit, because in his mind, he, unlike Michael, who's very easy to love, Garth isn't. There's a scene in season 2 called Goliath Returns. Devin, Miles, and Adrian Margot are having a conversation. Garth kidnaps Devin and April and takes them back to the mansion. Anyway, Adrian says, "It's fascinating the friends that we have in common, such a small world." Devin looks at her and says, "Garth Knight is no friend. Even you should know that." And, you have to take a step back. Compared to Michael and Garth, contrary to popular belief, Michael, is this upstanding citizen. He fights for good. He wears his heart on his sleeve. He does his best to be kind to people. He fights for those who can't fight for themselves. Long story short, he is easier to love when compared to Garth, where Garth has a lot of this trauma, a lot of this childhood grief, not genuinely happy, and even he is aware, possibly, that he may not be easy to love, especially when compared to Michael. Again, Michael is everything that I'm not. Everybody chooses Michael over myself. Again, I'm not condoning anything. I'm not condoning Garth's behaviors. I am just offering a perspective of where those behaviors are coming from. Not saying they're right, not saying they're wrong. Personal versus clinical opinion. Those are two separate opinions. I mean, Garth is an evil villain. In fact, I use the term villain loosely, but in terms of villains, Garth is separate from every other villain in the show. 9 times out of 10, with every villain on the show, Michael's annoying me. Michael must go down. We must defeat him before he defeats us. Garth's reasoning is different from anybody else. And I could do a whole other video of like Garth Knight versus Durant, like the two biggest villains in Knight Rider. I might do that eventually. I'm not going to do that now. I just want to highlight this video of Garth. Anyway, Garth, in a nutshell, and as I said, he doesn't find himself lovable. And he may also think that he is not deserving of love. He's not. So, for example, if we go back a couple of slides here, right here, Elizabeth, Garth's mother, she is the only one in Garth's life who doesn't have an ulterior motive. It seems she is the only one that actually cares about him. And it's almost, or if not sad in a way, that Elizabeth, his mother, is his only support system. So there is a lot of anger, shame. So what's going on in Garth's head? And if he were to hypothetically seek help for all of the stuff that's going on in his life, one of the big questions is what's going to be his mental health diagnosis, because we know there's a lot going on, and how are we going to treat him? Treat as in, what coping skills can we use, or what theoretical models can we use to help Garth? One of, so the first is really the diagnosis. And many of you are probably saying in the comments, well, obviously, Garth Knight's a narcissist. Yes and no. The term in the DSM-5, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for diagnosing certain mental health concerns. So the term for this is actually narcissistic personality disorder. Yep. So in order for Garth to be diagnosed with this, assessments will obviously have to be done, and he has to hit certain symptoms or certain criteria to meet the diagnosis. And now, not everyone, I just want to put it out there, May was Mental Health Awareness Month, and I know with diagnoses, there is a lot of stigma behind it. And we get in this mindset where we are our disease, where the language becomes, narcissistic, depressed, anxious, autistic. What happens with that language is we start labeling not only others who may have had those mental or who have those mental health concerns, but we also start labeling ourselves. And one of the big thing is people are more than their diagnoses. So instead of saying, you know, a depressed person, someone with depression, a person with depression, in theory, and what I advocate for is you change the language, you change the perception. So, whatever is going on, whatever you have going on in your life, you are more than what you're going through right now. You are a person first before anything. And this is the same thing with medical diagnoses too. No one wants to get a medical diagnosis because again, there's the stigma behind it, right? You have this certain medical diagnosis, and now you're going to be labeled that for the rest of your life. But you are more than that, just like you're more than your mental health diagnosis. So back to Garth, even though yes, he is more than his mental health diagnosis, we still have to give him a mental health diagnosis. Well, as someone who's licensed and credentialed to do so. So if we are looking at narcissistic personality disorder, Garth has to hit five or more criteria. One of them being having a grandiose sense of self-importance. We all know Garth is hungry for power. We all know Garth wants everything his own way. He wants everything to bend to his will. He wants his life to be like Burger King. Have it your way. And that's exactly the perception that Garth has. So, in essence, we can check criteria one off the list. Next one is a preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love. Again, power, brilliance, success, a preoccupation with. We can argue that. Garth says in Goliath Returns, I want it all, a new life, a new future, and most of all, revenge. He's preoccupied with revenge. He's preoccupied with destroying the foundation, destroying Michael Knight and Devin Miles. That is his obsession. So we can check number two off the list. Next one requires excessive admiration. And you guys can tell me in the comments section if I'm wrong, but I don't really think that Garth is, I guess he's looking for excessive admiration. He wants he even says he wants the whole world to witness his triumph. Well, in that case, then yeah, looking for excessive admiration. So we're three for three right now. Four, has a sense of entitlement. Need I say more? Throughout this entire video, need I say more? He definitely has a sense of entitlement. Is interpersonally exploitive in a way. So if we go back to season 2, episode 1, Goliath, Garth is romantically involved with a character named Rita, and he uses Rita, I guess, to his will, as well as Rita's brother. So, how I said earlier that it seems that everyone with the exception of Garth's mother has an ulterior motive to have Garth around. Garth, in turn, is having ulterior motives for the people around him. That tracks. 6, lacks empathy. That's something to think about, isn't it? Garth doesn't seem the type of person to have any empathy. Now, what is empathy? Well, there's sympathy, which is feeling, how I phrase it, feeling sorry for someone. Empathy is more being able to feel a person's pain. Like, for example, even though you may not be able to maybe you not have gone through that same experience, but you've gone through the same emotions and thought process of another individual, and you're able to place yourself in their shoes and have a deeper understanding of what they're going through. Garth doesn't have that. And probably because no one ever showed him empathy. So if he's not shown empathy, what makes people think he's going to show empathy in return? Number seven is often envious of others or believes others are envious of them. In a way, Garth is envious, especially of Michael. I keep making quotes, but I go back to Goliath. Garth says to Michael, we have so much in common, our surnames, our faces, my father. Why not our future? And then speaks to Michael about going back to Africa to the same prison. And Garth says, the same hellhole I was subjected to while my father turned his back on me and gave you everything that was rightfully mine. So, yeah, there is some serious envy in there, for sure. And then shows arrogant, haughty behaviors and attitudes. Well, yes. Yes, indeed. Garth can be abrupt sometimes. Not gonna lie. Like you can YouTube some clips of Garth Knight. Hopefully it's not the AI versions. But yeah, he definitely has some arrogance about him at times. So, how does one treat somebody with this? Like, how do you go about it? Well, there's many different ways. Again, Garth isn't a client of mine, and because how much I love this character, I don't think I ethically and or morally can be his counselor. But hypothetically, if he was seeing somebody on the outside, what would they be working on with him? So one of so a different approach or a type of approach you could do is REBT, rational emotive behavioral therapy. So people can control their own thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Because a lot of the times we feel things, we think things, and then we do things. And it's not necessarily, and as I said earlier, it's not usually the thoughts and feelings that get us into trouble. It's what we do with them. It's the example I gave earlier about wanting to punch somebody in the face. It's the same thing here, but also being able to feel and process those emotions. I'll get to that in a bit. So Garth has a lot of negative thoughts, and it's being able to challenge those negative thoughts. And I'm not saying those thoughts and feelings are invalid because they're not. It's coming from a genuine place of anger, frustration, shame, feeling of never being good enough for anyone. So that can cause a lot of negative emotions. And then maybe working with him at some point about alternative ways of thinking. But we also have to help him process those emotions in a healthier way. Because how he's handling his emotions now are definitely not healthy at all. So another modality is called dialectical behavioral therapy. So it's helping individuals manage overwhelming emotions. It's basically emotional regulation. How can we get someone from an emotion of 10 even down to an 8? Because sometimes we can let our emotions drive us. There's something in DBT called wise mind, where sometimes in life we're controlled by two different mindsets. One is the logical mind, where it's just facts upon facts upon facts. We base our decision making based on logic. Like, this is the fact, this is what it is, and this is what we got to go by. Think Sheldon Cooper from Big Bang Theory or Spock, those mindsets. They do things based on the evidence before them. They're not considering feelings at all. Then we have the other mind, which is the emotional mind, where we behave based on our emotions. We're angry, we do something. Our emotions take over. Like, our mind is basically a car, and our emotions take over on the driver's seat, and then they're doing the driving, and you're just sitting in the passenger seat helpless. So then there's wise mind, which is a combination of both logic and emotions. So looking at the facts as they are without changing them, but also incorporating your emotions too. And then coming up with a wise and having those two perspectives, being able to make a wise decision, especially when it comes to changing behaviors. So I know that it's a lot to digest, and it is a lot. And when you look at all this and from this perspective, you can understand Garth a little bit more. Maybe have a little more empathy towards him. Like, you don't have to. I just found it very fascinating how, even though this character appeared in 2 episodes, that he had this much of an impact and you can get this much information based on 2 episodes. So it's interesting, especially if we're looking at it from a clinical perspective, exactly what's going on. And maybe learning from this, maybe taking a reflection at our own lives. I'm not perfect. I'm not going to tell you that I am, and I'm not going to pretend that I am. Because at the end of the day, I'm a human being. I make mistakes, and we all just got to learn from them. I know it feels like, especially with the Shannon reviews, it's very, a very heavy, almost a heavy topic. Coming back, here's a whole bunch of information. Why not? And again, I'm recording on Zoom, and sorry if I use Microsoft PowerPoint. Um, I hope it worked. Hope it turns out well when I edit the video. And I hope you guys enjoy. So I'm Shannon from Shannon Reviews, and I am very glad to be back. And I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video. Bye bye.